Welcome, everyone, to our interview series with nature-based school founders. I am Meagan Duncan, founder of Connected Kids Thrive, Positive Behaviors Guide for Nature Schools. And today we have Josée Bergeron. And let me know if I mutilated that.
No, that was great.
Amazing. I
Thanks.
am
Yeah.
so excited to have this conversation today. It's going to be a little bit different. And as for our audience, as you know, you're going to get so much value no matter the way you serve children, whether you're an educator, a founder, a parent, you're going to get a lot of value from this conversation, just as all the other conversations. And just to front load, there's a positive behavior tip, right? I'm going to let you know the questions that we're going to cover today. So we're going to ask about the inspiration that Josee had to start her, the programming that she does for children and families, a challenge or behavior shift that she's overcome, that's really been pivotal in her journey, a nugget of wisdom, a recommendation that she would like to share, and a wish for us, her audience. Hopefully, she'll share a story or two. I might share one of mine that really highlights this work and how profound and meaningful it is for children and families. And then we may even get to dig into some behavior stuff, which I know is very exciting. And so, with that, Josee, will you please introduce yourself and then we'll dig in?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Megan, for having me on this interview. It's truly a pleasure. So, my name is Josee, and I am the founder of Backwoods Mama, which is a website, a resource website for families and educators who are hoping to get their children outside. I'm also the author of forthcoming book, Beyond the Front Door, Embracing Nature for a Happier and Healthier Family, which is being released into the wild February 2026. So these are, yeah, I'm so excited. Almost there. Yeah, so I essentially my programming, my passion is to help families, specifically parents, caregivers, and educators, get their children outside in a way that feels simple and confident, and also backed with science and research and what the recommendations are there.
Amazing. Thank you. And um, Josee did not mention that she has her background is in nursing, right? So she's
Yes, that's
super
right.
studious and research based. So it's
Yes,
always fun when we can have that angle too. And I wanted to highlight that
absolutely. Oh,
for
thank you.
you.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Now, onto your inspiration. What was it that inspired you to start this journey?
I know. And I was thinking of that. I've been thinking of that the last, few days before this interview. And I think that there's been multiple inspirations. And I think this is probably true for a lot of people, little
Mhm.
sort of like seeds that have been planted over the last, honestly, probably my whole life. So I grew up in the northern interior of British Columbia, Canada. I still live in BC, Canada, but I'm close to the Washington border now. But I grew up outside a lot. And so I think that that obviously had an impact for sure when I started having my own children. So when I started having my own three children, we had a pretty pivotal thing happen. We actually moved from the northern part of British Columbia away from family and friends. I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-month-old at the time. And when I look back on this choice, I'm like, I must have been crazy. I don't know. Maybe I was still, I don't know. So we moved away from all our supports to this tiny rural town in the south of Okanagan, of British Columbia. And at that time, I was so lonely. It was a very difficult time, actually. And I felt so disconnected from community, from everything. And so I did what I think I probably felt somewhat natural. Perhaps I was just drawing from my own childhood. I started bringing my children outside, and we started exploring just literally beyond our front door, our backyard, our front yard, and then we started making circles around our neighborhood. And I started sharing our adventures and our misadventures on a blog that I had started in way back when 2009 when everybody started blogging because it was just the thing, right? So I started sharing about our experiences and I started getting questions. I started getting comments and emails from other families, other parents, even educators asking me a variety of things. How do you do this? What do you do about this? Can you give me a recommendation about how to, explore this or connect with nature in this way? And all of a sudden I realized, oh wow, I'm not the only one that's having these questions, that are perhaps struggling with these things. And so I started to switch my my blog into basically a website where I was providing resources and information for families. And so it started kind of really small, this sort of like tiny seed, and it kind of grew and grew. And that was really the start of kind of the inspiration. And then over the years that came, I started to really pull in, this kind of background in healthcare, this love for research and science. And so I would start to weave this information into the advice that I was sharing with families. And then things just slowly built, and I started becoming much more active in the community, connecting with families, leading different, programming and sessions to help families connect with the natural. So there was a lot of on the ground learning, plus, the research learning. And then in end of 2019, right before the pandemic, we moved to a city. So that
Oh
was
my
another, I
gosh.
know. And I was like, I'm never moving.
Wow.
Right? There's all these things in life. You're like, I'm never going to do that. And then it's like, haha, joke's on you. So we ended up moving to a city. Now, mind you, this is still a city in sort of central interior BC. So we're not talking like, big city here, but still for me, it felt big. So we moved to a city, and in that move, there was several things that happened with the pandemic, and I just felt like my connection to the natural world was just becoming so fragmented. And so I had this other moment of inspiration where I was realizing what was happening in our family and noticing that so many families, again, parents, caregivers, were struggling with some of the same things. And that's where my book was born. So I was like, okay, as I sort of made this, understood what was going on in our culture and how it was impacting families, and also realizing that time outdoors, a connection with the natural world, is so, so important for the health and well-being of our children and of parents and families. And I just felt that I really needed to, and that there's a lot of really great things that are being done, for especially for children, but that parents are sometimes overlooked in the equation, and yet they play a very important role in fostering connection to the natural world for their children. So my book really is to help parents understand their important role in all this, and how it will not only benefit their children, but really benefit them and their family as a whole. So,
Oh
my
my
very long
God.
answer.
Wow. Thank you. There's so
Mhm.
much goodness there. And I think one of the things that you hit on, and I'll circle back to a few more, but parents are overlooked. I 100% agree with you. Thinking, from where I come from, always behavior. Um, the guides in the room are they're the front lines. So whether that's the educator or the parents, and so we got to take care of those parents so that they can take care of those kiddos in these really beautiful, unique ways. Um, that's amazing. That modeling, very, very cool. I can totally resonate with. We also moved from. We're here in Colorado, but we moved to Texas for a while, and um, lonely, so lonely. But we found a preserve, and
Mhm.
through there we found our homeschool, and we found families just out and about, and we made those really, really important connections. And so it was not beyond our front door. We had to go somewhere, but it wasn't far.
Yeah.
And it was so
Yeah.
lovely. And it's so many fond memories still. Did you, when you moved to the city for your second time, did you have nature beyond your front door still? Yeah,
Yes, there was, but it was a very interesting time, and I think
COVID
I'm
was
not sure. Yeah, it was
brutal.
kind of crazy. I know here in our province, there was even a point where they had closed down our parks.
Yeah,
So, like your state parks or provincial parks were closed. We were not allowed to go in them, even our regional parks. And so it was, I mean, it was pretty, that was really,
makes
really
sense.
difficult, because I think that for many people, that was such a source of sort of peace and comfort and calm. To have that removed was very difficult. We still had access to nature, and so obviously very close to home. But yeah, it was still very difficult. And for us, as the restrictions started to ease, the bigger challenge was actually, I always thought, okay, we are going to go back to what it was like when we lived in the smaller town. And while living in a bigger city has, some definite benefits, the thing that I didn't anticipate was just how much busier we would be in the city. And I think part of that, my children also getting older. So I have three older children, a gap, and then two younger children.
Okay.
And sorry. And what I found was, as the restrictions eased off, instead of reconnecting with the natural world, we ended up just becoming overscheduled. And that, in a sense, was what was starting to fracture this connection with the natural world. We had less time to get outside, and to really connect with nature. And, when you're surrounded by a culture that is really saying more, right? More extracurriculars. And then all of a sudden it's like, but what happened to the picnics under the tree and the wanders down by the creek? These were all disappearing. So it was our own extinction of experience. I'm not sure if listeners will be familiar with that term, but it's this kind of idea that we are losing the experience of connecting with the natural world because of sort of various things. And one of them for families is yeah, being overscheduled. So yeah.
I I think many listeners here can resonate with that term overscheduling. And, as you and I would imagine, we would invite, all parents, especially, to really think about what's necessary in your schedule. Um,
Yeah.
this may not, just from my standpoint, extracurricular activities are not necessary at all for children. Just
Hmm.
go be free in on a preserve out your back door. That's just what kiddos need. This ties right into the tendency of 500 to 1,000 that I talk about a lot. Kids are told what to do 500 to 1,000 times a day. And that's just,
Hmm.
that doesn't count those extra stuff, the extracurriculars or the therapies or all these other things that they're involved with. And it's just something to keep in mind that, when we just delegate to them and dictate to them and take, get demands from them all day long, they have nothing left to give. And then we wonder why we've
Yeah,
got behavior challenges. We're tapped out,
exactly.
they're tapped out. And so,
Yeah,
um, just really giving yourself permission to, you know, decide if it's really necessary. I, for one, we do
exactly.
not do extracurriculars in this house. No sports,
Yeah.
none of that.
Yeah,
We play.
and it's very difficult, right? It's difficult when you have your friends or your neighbors who are constantly saying, "Oh, is your, child doing this or what are your children
Mhm.
doing?" Right? So it can be a lot
Yeah,
of pressure. It's a
yeah,
lot of pressure, but I think it's so important to let parents know and to give them the permission to say no and to make them realize that unstructured outdoor play is amazing for
so valuable.
children, is so, so good. It's something that can't really be mimicked in a lot of
Mm,
extracurricular activities. And so that really should be a priority for a lot of children for their health and well-being and development is getting a
yeah.
lot of that in. Yes.
And at the end, we'll talk a little bit about behavior and how we'll just make sure that we touch on how to help parents trust themselves more to release
Yes.
control and release
Hmm.
that need for are we giving enough because you're giving
Uh-huh.
enough.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
okay, number two, has there been any particular challenge or behavior shift that you've overcome that has shaped your journey?
So many.
Of
So
course.
many. Okay, so sometimes I feel bad for my three older children because it's like, oh, they had to experience me learning all these things and making
Yes.
all these shifts. And they're great kids, so if they have
They're
survived.
safe forgiving you just like we've forgiven
They
our
forget.
parents. It's all good.
That's right, exactly. So definitely, when I first started in my journey as a mother, bringing my children outside, I definitely had some preconceptions and behaviors that I thought were, helpful or
Mm,
good, that were definitely not helpful. So I think one of them was as as we would go outside, well, there's a few. I'll kind of touch on one. One is that I would sometimes really focus on sort of passing on of information, of knowledge, of focusing
Mm,
on nature knowledge. And I want to be, clear that obviously it's really beautiful to understand and know the beautiful world of nature around us. But where I went wrong is I was focusing more on facts and less on the relationship. And so I have this one story that I share in my book where my children are, wandering on the trail ahead. It's a beautiful day. The sunshine is, filtering through the pine trees, and they're just so filled with joy. It's such a beautiful moment. And despite that, I look over and I see this Oregon grape bush on the side of the trail. And I think to myself, I need to see if my children know what this is called. So I interrupt their play, which now I would not do that. And I call them over and I start to quiz my children. And I say to them, "Do you guys know what this is?" And it wasn't there's ways of doing that, right?
mhm.
That can be very beautiful and meaningful, but this was not one of those. This was me being like testing their knowledge for kind of my sake, sort of, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and I think too, because we are homeschoolers as well, and so you kind of always have in the
Mm,
back, this like testing, the idea that can still creep in even as a homeschooler.
mhm.
And I remember my children looking at me with confused eyes and saying, like, "Mama, like, why are we having this conversation? Like, can't we just go back and play?" And in that moment, I thought, oh, yes, like, yeah. And that was a bit of an aha moment for me. And I'm like, I don't think that was the right approach here. And that wasn't that was not the only time I had done that. But over the years, in just really understanding more about children and the natural world and nature connection, something I talk about quite a bit in my book, that the most important part first has to be that connection or that relationship with the natural world. And in that connection, there will be curiosity. And in that curiosity, there will be questions. And there are ways of deepening knowledge and understanding of the natural world through their curiosity and their questioning. But what I find is one big pivot I had to do was to stop coming in with like the answers,
Mhm.
right? And instead shifting to this idea of co-teaching or co-parenting with the natural world
Oof.
and coming in from that perspective. So that was a pretty big shift for me. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. The whole testing thing. I think, I mean, all parents, we're all educators to some degree. Some of us have, degrees that mandate that we're educators, and it is
Hmm.
a tricky balance of being like, oh, come here, look at this thing I must educate you on. And
Yes.
I remember that also. And I love your, you sharing that you discover to let nature be your co-teacher, that their curiosities will kind of lead the way, and then they'll be asking questions that you can engage them with. And it's that more, bottom up approach versus top down approach.
Yes.
We're the wise ones filling you with knowledge. I love that. I i have a similar story. When I finally learned to trust myself and the kiddos in my little nature school, they were investigating a little ladybug on a branch. And I was getting fairly decent at this in and out dance of, coming in when I was invited, and then letting them be when they really wanted to be, amongst themselves. And through their questions, they eventually asked if space had a smell. And yeah,
I love that.
it was just like, whoa, kiddos really, um, they have it in them. And then when they're given time and space to ask those amazing questions, they uncover so much, and we get to be, right along with them. So letting nature be that
Hmm.
co-teacher is so cool.
Exactly. And sometimes the things that they ask or the things that they notice are just so amazing. Like they're just you would never I would never have thought to question if space has a smell. Right? Like so it's just yeah, it's really interesting. And I find too I have sort of a similar story where I was wandering down a trail with my daughter, and I want to say she was maybe 7 or 8 at the time. I can't really remember. And she had noticed something and had pointed it out to me. And I can't remember if it was a flower or perhaps a rock. But I remember asking her, how is it that we are wandering down the same trail and you spot all these things that I miss? And I remember her looking at me and just saying, Mama, it's because you assume that you already know what's there. You already think you know what's out there. But I'm
Mhm.
curious and I look for it and I see these things. And it was just I remember thinking, oh yeah, she's so right. Right. So often as adults, as as parents, as educators, we kind of we see what we want to see.
Mhm.
And we can let that sort of block this curiosity and these questions that we might not even think of that kids are bringing up, which is so beautiful. And I just love that, that for me was a shift, right?
Yeah.
Coming, like you say, not coming in as like top-down educator, but allowing my children to lead me along and to show me this beauty and awe that they see in the natural world. And as a parent, that was pretty transformational for me to see things like that. And the cool thing is that it's supported in sort of the research and in the science and academia, this sort of shift perspective and this relational way of being, and how that in itself can actually really boost a child and even an adult sense of well-being, in very unique ways that are just beyond even just being outside, right? Like this connection. So it's really interesting.
I I love that story with your kiddo. And what I'm thinking of, especially from a behavior standpoint, is, you know, we always find what we're looking for. Um, no matter what it is, whether it's on the negative side of things or the positive
Mm-hmm.
side of things. And as I put myself in your shoes, if that was my child coming to me and saying that, I'm wondering, what am I looking for? That I assume I already know, or am I 10 steps, or, 10 yards ahead too at our destination? Or where am I in this moment where our kiddos are really, they're looking for the new thing maybe that we I don't know that we overlook. So that was I never thought of
Mm-hmm.
that before. Of she's maybe looking for things new and we're just not, or
Yeah.
maybe we're looking for new things um, more extravagantly versus just that small
Mm-hmm.
flower or that piece of wood that looks interesting. So I love
Yeah.
that. I've never thought of that before. So cool. I love that. Um, yeah, very, very cool. I have a ton of notes here. I think in the effort of time, we will go to the next the next
Yes, for
question.
sure. I'm sure we could chat for a while. Yes, go for
Yeah.
it.
Um, okay. Wisdom. What nugget of wisdom or recommendation can you give our audience if, maybe they're thinking of creating a nature school, or maybe they would like to get outside more? Like, what is that nugget of wisdom that you wish you would have known earlier in your journey that would have just made things a little smoother?
Okay, so there's definitely a few things, and I'll try
Yeah.
to keep it sort of not too lengthy. I think the first thing that I've definitely learned over the years is that nature is everywhere. So
Mm,
when I was a younger parent, in my early parenting days, I used to really kind of chase the wild nature adventure experiences. And there's nothing wrong with those. They're beautiful and exciting. But I think sometimes in our minds, because of our culture and kind of our ways of thinking of the natural world, we often think of nature as something that is out there, that is not accessible. And I think this is a very big reality for parents and families. I get this comment quite often on social media when people are like, "Oh, well, you have this nature." I'm like, "Actually, this is, like right outside my front door. Like we're not chasing anything fancy here." So I think the first nugget is to remind parents and caregivers and educators that nature is all around us. And yes, there's going to be different degrees of wildness in nature,
mhm,
but we can still connect with whatever nature is close or nearby. So I talk a lot about nearby nature, and nearby nature can still be beautiful and meaningful. And when we recognize that it's there and we connect with it, then that can be a very good thing. And so that's kind of my first tidbit, this idea
mm,
of nature being everywhere. The second is this idea of moments, not minutes, that I do talk about in my book. So I think the reality is a lot of families are overscheduled, and sometimes that's not something that we can fix tomorrow. But I think it's something to really, like you say, think about in just the overall rhythm of family life, and to really think about, what is really necessary, what can we let go of, but to also realize that, we need to be trying to get outside and obviously as much as possible, but that even if families are having intentional moments of connection with the natural world throughout their day, that these are still very powerful and these can still make a very, very big difference in children's lives. And this is not just me saying this, this is actually, in the research that we're
Yes.
seeing coming out on nature connection and health and well-being. So I think this is something I just would um, really want to sort of encourage parents not to be discouraged if you're not spending hours outside each day. Obviously, like we have this ideal in our mind and we hear different
Mhm.
advice and numbers from different people. And I think, everybody's trying to just get families outside as much as possible, and it's great, but not to be discouraged if, say, on a day, you might just be able to step outside and notice the way the wind feels, or you go walk in some grass at the park with your bare feet, as long as there's like no glass or anything, but or you notice the bird in the tree. So these little moments of noticing nature with our children are so important and so impactful, and that's what sort of builds this relationship and our desire to want to go outside more. So that's kind of another really important tidbit, and I think it also gives parents a little permission to not less be less hard on themselves. I feel as parents, especially in our culture right now, it's so hard. It's
Yeah.
really difficult. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of advice. And so um my approach, or the way that I try to encourage families, is to, again, yeah, to be more kind to yourself, you don't have to have grand plans, but these sort of like these little moments, these noticing of nature's nearby your house is, that's really a wonderful place to start. And that can be enough, right? When you're just kind of getting started. So,
I I love that so much. The nature is everywhere. I 100% agree with you, and to varying degrees, just like you said. It can be
hmm
wild BLM land outside your door, or,
hmm
truly just the grass, near the sidewalk. Like it really, there's critters everywhere.
Yeah.
Whatever is available is enough. That is very,
hmm
very true. Thank you for highlighting that. And then um, the other thing you said that I want to circle back to is moments versus minutes. Oh my gosh, I love that. And um, yeah, quality over quantity, right? Like having those quality moments together versus, okay, we got to be out here for 50 minutes,
Yeah.
releasing the pressure. So I love that. When you talk about connection with nature, I'm always going back to connection as trust, belonging, and significance. And what I what comes to me here is, not to add to a parent's plate,
hmm
but whenever we can name the type of clouds in the sky, maybe just one or two, or we can name that bird or that bird or that weed or that tree. When our kids can do it, they feel so powerful, and they feel like the knowledge they have is meaningful. They can use it right then. They can showcase what
hmm
they know to their friends, or their mom, or their parents or whatever, and it really deepens their connection with the natural world, not only with the people around them, but truly, the flora and fauna too. And they can name it. So much power is in a name. Um,
hmm
and so we've worked on that this year, of being able to name the clouds. They're so interesting, and kids love it when we get it wrong so they can correct us, or maybe we're both wrong and then we can look it up later. And it's about the connection. It's not about being right. It's about the intention. And yeah, being able to name the natural world is so, so powerful.
Exactly. And I think one thing that I will say to parents too, because I think sometimes they might be a little bit afraid that they don't have enough knowledge, right? They're like,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I don't even know the names of the flowers, growing here or there. And I always say, that's okay.
Mhm.
There's so much I don't know, like
Mhm.
so much. And I think that it's okay to tell your child you don't know, but that you can learn and discover together. And there's, so many great apps that we have now. Like iNaturalist such a
Mhm.
great app, right? That parents can use to learn more and, like you say, find the names and understand the role of these different plants and critters and bugs in their ecosystem. And yeah, and then when they really connect with that and notice that, then the wonderful thing is they start to care about it.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that's so important, right? Yes, and this is something that I kind of talk about it again. It's kind of this like top-down knowledge, like we need to care about this. This is important versus coming from a place of relationship,
Yeah.
and a place of like connection. And from that place, then now we care, right?
Yeah.
Because now we know not just like random details, but it's like we know and with a
Uh,
very connected way who this, this what this plant is and what its name and its role, right? And it's just totally different.
I really love that. I've never heard it articulated like that, that connection leads to caring and for others and the natural world. So very, very
Hmm.
cool. One thing that I wrote down is, when we getting our kids outside, it can be hard to fall into that. Oh, first of all, hold on. Let me jump back to the point you made. If we don't know, that's perfectly fine. And I 100% agree with you. And I'm glad you brought it back to that. Something that we have loved doing is making up our own names.
Yes, I love that.
And
And
it,
some are so funny.
yes. And I
Yeah.
mean, it can evolve over time, but the connection with that adult being out there with no expectations, that's
Hmm.
the first start. And then we can learn
Yeah,
those real names later.
exactly.
So yeah, don't like just like Jose is saying, let's not let the fact that if we don't feel like we know enough stop us because we don't have to know anything.
Mm.
Just trusting ourselves to just take one foot into the other in front of the other and just moving forward.
Yeah,
um
exactly.
Something I wrote down was, and I'm not even sure where this fits in anymore, taking like a little tea party outside, because sometimes it can be hard for parents to be like, okay, we're out here, now what?
Exactly. Yeah,
And
it's so
so
true. Yes.
especially if it's not far away, just a
Hmm.
yoga mat or some sort of blanket, and just having a little
Hmm.
tea party and letting the kids, if it's cool to take shoes off, that can be that little, breaking those barriers little bit by little bit. I often
Exactly.
say it's hard to stop a behavior. It's we have to like reshape it. So if we want to go outside more, we can do it by little bit by little bit by little bit.
Yes, thank you. So this is what I talk about in my book. I talk about
Yeah.
like tiny habits or micro habits or pebble habits. I
Ah,
have just sort of different names, but yeah, I just talk about making little tiny tweaks. And if that's, if the holdup is, I don't feel comfortable, maybe doing this right away. It's like, okay, that's okay. Just maybe start by sitting on your front step and reading a book together, or
yeah.
going onto your porch and, like you say, having some tea or having lunch out there,
Yes.
or just like these tiny little things, and being, trying to make these little tiny habits, change it,
Mhm.
incorporating them, and also just being very kind to yourself. Some
Yes.
weeks your kids are sick and you don't get to go outside as much as you would like, and that's okay. And then just, trying again. So I do talk about this behavioral part of it, and I am so glad you brought that up because I really find it's not talked about enough,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to parents and families, because really a lot of this is behavioral
Mhm.
tweaks and changes, right? From for parents, and those are not always very easy. That they can be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So, kind of making small things, and then the other thing I was going to say to that. So, a significant part of my book, the first part, kind of lays the foundation of sort of what we've been talking about, things like nature connection, and weaves in my story as well. But then the next four parts of my book actually follow the seasons, and so one thing I really encourage families to do is to really root them into seasonal connection with the natural world, whatever that looks like where they live, because I find that having these kind of anchors in the seasons also encourages, families to get outside and notice different things, maybe bring some things, pine cones home to create with,
Yeah.
even, eating more seasonally makes parents and families more aware of what's growing, what's flourishing in different
Mhm.
seasons. And so, yeah, recognizing that, we often think about like the house and the outdoors, but then when we start to think of it a little bit more fluidly, and, we're bringing, we're, we're sort of recognizing the seasons and bringing it inside, and it kind of becomes more of a flow and becomes more part of family life and traditions and celebrations. And then it just becomes more connected throughout the way that we have our family rhythm. And that can be really helpful in having those little micro ways of connection in that way as well. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. I love that. Bringing in the seasons and then, yeah, food on the table, making it seasonal, more sustainable, which we would all love
Hmm.
to be a little bit more
Yeah,
sustainable. So,
exactly.
some
Yes.
great tips, I'm sure you have in your book too, will be great. Um, okay. So, for our audience listening and thinking, there may be founders on here or educators or parents, what is your main wish that their main takeaway might be?
I think that my main wish in a lot of the work that I do is to really instead to really kind of come back to looking at the relationship, our relationship and our children's relationship and connection with the natural world. I think connection is so important. Connection is key,
Mhm.
and I think that's going to look different for everybody else, or it. Relationship is different for every person. It's very subjective. But I think that if we're focusing on just building a stronger relationship connection with the natural world, with our children, and it's all kind of connected, right? That is really the heart of a lot of the work that I do. And so that would be my encouragement, and and that parents realize that they can do that very close to home in very small moments, and it can still be really meaningful. So,
Okay, I love
yeah.
that. All right, so now we're going to dig into a little bit about behavior. We haven't done too much of this kind of thing on the series before. Um, and with that, I'll just kind of let you take it away on some of your angles. And then if I can add something, I definitely, I'll do my part. What do you,
Okay,
what's
so
your take
what?
on the behavior piece?
Right. So, like we said before,
Yeah.
there's definitely a big behavioral piece when it comes to parents and children and encouraging this going of outside, getting outdoors. I think that one is habits, which we already talked about a little bit. I think a lot of parents also have some fear attached
Mhm.
to how their children might respond outdoors. So, I think that I hear a lot of parents say things like, I bring my child outdoors, but then they say they're bored and they want to go back inside. So, boredom is a really big one. And I'm not sure how you see that show up in your practice and how um, work with that. And even if you have parents that even say things like that to you, I'm not sure. Oh, my child's bored. So I think boredom is a really big one.
Okay.
I think another one that comes up quite a bit is things around like safety and
Mhm.
fear around safety and children's behaviors in play. So, parents are definitely there's more risk aversion or safetyism, I think was a term I read recently in
I
an
like
article,
that.
where there's this fear of children getting hurt and of taking risk in play. And there's this like a whole, you probably know this, yeah. So providing parents with guidance around uh, play, especially since I'm such an advocate of unstructured outdoor play, and in
Mhm.
unstructured outdoor play, children tend to go towards risky play. It's very natural, it's very normal. But parents are, I would say, many parents are very uncomfortable with this idea of this riskier play and knowing how to navigate that. And sometimes they might be okay with it, but other parents that they're with are not okay with it. So then that causes
Yeah.
conflict, right, within children that are playing. So that could be also like a pretty significant
Okay.
behavior things. So yeah, so I'm not sure if that's like a good
Yeah, no, I think
couple
that's
of things
good.
to talk about.
I don't want to
Yeah.
go too many more because I
Yeah,
mean,
because then we'll run
yeah,
out of time
and we'll,
for
yeah.
sure.
Okay, so boredom. I just like you love a good chunk of boredom for kids. Here's
Hmm.
the thing. If we tell kids boredom is good for you, it's kind of like telling them broccoli is good for you. That's not what they need to hear. They're just going to
Yeah.
dig in and defend their dignity because that's not helpful for them, especially if they're in a defensive space anyways. And then
Hmm.
we have to watch where we're coming from when we say that, what our intent is. So, what comes to me for a couple tips is how are we modeling that entertaining ourselves? How, are we plopping our butts down by the mud puddle, stirring
Mhm.
in the dirt with a stick? Are we, reading a book, while they're playing? What are we doing in those moments that they can see us and maybe imitate us? So we always want to watch our modeling first. Then if they come up and say, hey, I'm bored, we can be like, oh, we can invite them into a conversation. What they're likely looking for is connection and attention. And so we want to meet that need. Now, there's different ways we want to meet that. We want to look at what we're reinforcing, and that's a whole nother like training. Um,
Yeah.
but we really want to look at that need under that behavior. And we want them ultimately to enjoy being outdoors. This isn't a power. We've got to give them power in the right way so that they feel powerful in this setting. Because if it's just a fight, we're not going to want to go out there with them anyways, or either.
No.
And so I would, putting myself in that guide's position, I would invite them to do the thing I'm doing. Come be with me. That's the connection they're looking for. And then
Hmm.
I would say something like, "You're welcome to join me," or I might give a few options, but I like to end with an open-ended or something else because
Hmm. Yeah.
then they can be like, oh, cool, I can do this or this, and I'm still free. Because if we give a
Mhm.
closed-ended option, they'll be like, I don't want to do that either. You
Yeah,
know what I
exactly.
mean? And so there's, again, with the training that I do with the schools that I work with, we have different kinds of questions that we ask at certain times to help kids feel the right kind of power and so that we're reinforcing the right things. But that's a really good one is, modeling, doing the thing, inviting that connection of with, and then offering some choices and then that or something else.
Hmm.
But we don't need to tell them it's good for them because
I love your broccoli. That's
just
so
like
great, the
telling
broccoli.
them
I love
broccoli.
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really funny. And I find that, yeah, that often is sort of my approach as well. I will usually welcome in because the reality is boredom is actually very uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable feeling in the mind and even in the body to feel that. It's kind of this angst.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of recognize that it is uncomfortable to be in that and not to necessarily just be like, meh,
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
to sort of disregard their discomfort, I don't think is helpful.
Yeah.
But also, I love how you suggest ending with something open-ended. That's really great because
Mm-hmm.
I do find that if you just give all the options, they're like, no, 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 right?
Yeah.
And then so
Yeah.
to leave with something open-ended,
Yeah.
that's really great, and
Yeah.
and to bring them into whatever you're doing. Sometimes they do want to just be with
Yeah.
they want to have that connection with you, right? And to just be
They need that
alongside. So,
safety. And, parents, that's our next one that we're talking about is that safety.
mhm.
Well, oftentimes when a parent asks us the safety question, we need to circle it right back to the question before. They're not feeling safe.
Right.
And
Hmm.
boredom can be a little bit of that.
That's right.
That's why we want to be careful how we approach it and reinforce it. And we end up doing interesting things in different ways, but really just seeing that need under the behavior and or under that comment and
Hmm.
just like they're looking for trust and safety and yeah, I might even offer them, you can come draw in the mud with me. You can do that or something else, or just do nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's okay to do
yeah,
nothing too,
it's
right?
okay to
Yeah.
do nothing. And
Yeah.
I might, if we're looking for to make the word boredom less heavy, I might even say, I was bored for a second, but then I just sat down and started, doing this thing in the mud to help them be like, oh,
Hmm.
bored isn't bad. It's
Yeah,
just that space between. And
exactly.
so that modeling, anything we want our kiddos to do, I invite us to think about, okay, how can I do this more so that they feel comfortable imitating this?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Um, okay, safety.
I know it's such a big topic, sorry.
No, it's a good one. What I invite for parents and educators listening is we're supposed to get hurt. We're supposed to try things and get bumps and bruises. And we're supposed, that's how we learn. You know,
Hmm.
there is this interesting trend right now, especially since COVID, of container babies and
Hmm.
iPad babies. You know, and it's really stems from a fear of getting hurt. And that's, you know, kids are skipping walk or crawling because they're being contained. And then they're just, so we have these developmental stages and it's supposed to come with a lot of bruises. So just feel into that. And you know what I say is evidence of awesomeness. When my kiddo comes with a
Yes.
splinter or a smashed finger or something, um, evidence of awesomeness. Now, with that, you know, to help, you know, that's like a far step, right? How do we get to
Hmm.
that far step with a little step? Um,
Hmm.
I have so I take a little nature group out periodically, and I bought them all little first aid kits, and I had this for my preschool also. They all had their first aid kits, and they would take their own splinters out with their own tweezers.
That's awesome.
Like they were so empowered. They didn't look at these boo boos with
Hmm.
disdain. They were just like, "Whoa, okay, I'm going to take care of this." And how meaningful is that? Like
Yes.
that's where the goodness is in those
Hmm.
learnings, right? I mean,
Yes.
running through
Yeah.
the forest is great, but you know, tripping on the log and the
Hmm.
learning that comes from that, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, it's so important. Yes. And I
Yeah.
think that the research does show that children who are given the opportunity to engage in risky play actually become better at sort of noticing and managing risk as
Yeah.
they, develop and grow older. And I have seen that. I have
Mm-hmm.
seen, that children who have been given in sort of just my day to day, that when they are given that opportunity, that they too tend to assess risk much better. So I think that that's really important for parents to know. I think sometimes they're afraid that the opposite will happen, but it's not true.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I read somewhere, I can't remember, you know, thinking of like a play structure that's concrete, metal, and plastic, kids just go crazy on those because there's this false sense of safety.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess it could be real in a way also, but it's when kiddo is climbing a tree or rock, they generally naturally slow down.
They do. Yeah.
And if they don't, they might fall and then they'll slow down next time. It'll be a
That's right.
learning. And then
Yeah.
you won't have to worry. And I think
Yeah.
some language and some communication that might come with that, and I imagine some of this is in your book too, you know, instead of saying be careful, be careful, be careful, because that can be
Yep.
very like like they're already doing something wrong and they haven't even taken a step
Exactly.
on the log yet.
Yeah.
If we're worried, for the audience listening, tapping can be so helpful when we feel that anxiousness. This is
Hmm.
my favorite spot to tap, or if I like to cross midline, just right here on my collarbone. And when I feel like anxious, I go in first. Maybe I don't
Yeah.
need to say anything. Maybe they're
Yes.
fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then with that, you know, most things actually aren't an emergency.
Yes, I know. And I think yeah, that's so important and so great. And I do talk about it in my book. And I think there's a like doctorate researcher, Mariana Brusani, who does a lot of work in risky play. And so she says something similar. If you see your child doing something, and they're not in obviously immediate, significant risk of, danger,
Uh-huh.
that just to take a breath or count, just have a moment to
Mm-hmm.
just really calm your system down and observe what's going on before stepping in. And so I think she uses the phrase not safe as possible, but safe as necessary.
I
So
like
obviously we want to make sure children are not going to be seriously injuring themselves. But like you say, bumps and bruises are a very normal part of childhood, very important for learning. And if the risk of injury is pretty minor, then we can allow them that space to gain the confidence.
that.
And
Mm-hmm.
and they really do, like when they do risky
Yeah.
things, so they just see their faces and that I did that, right? There's so
Right.
much. pride and joy in doing these kinds of things. So, but yes, I think that for parents, it's really helpful if you can just take a moment. And I remember having to go through this sort of like shift and change myself as a parent because my three, I'm like, wow, I don't know if this is genetic or my children are wild, like the things
Yeah.
they do. So I really did have to learn to, like you say, just calm myself, really look at the situation, and be like, okay. And like you say, most of the time it was fine. They
Yeah.
managed it. Or even if it was, sometimes I might just coach them with saying
Mhm.
something like, like how are you feeling there
Mhm.
in that tree? Like, do you have a plan to come down? Or right? Just kind of using a different language instead of saying, yes, be careful. And yeah, I do talk about that too, because I definitely did lots of that. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is not really helpful to me or the
Yeah.
child. So yeah.
Yeah, we can ask things like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you notice about this rock? Or what do you notice
Mm-hmm.
about this? And like have them build that awareness and those internal skills. Something that
Exactly.
I've used because I'm a foster mom too. And something I use with a little guy that we have a lot. We're very close with his bio family, but is if you get up there and you get stuck, what's your plan?
Yeah.
Or if you fall out of that, how are you going to handle it? And like
Yes,
helping them be
exactly.
like, huh, if I fall, well, okay. But it's my modeling of tone. It's not
Yes,
this punitive. If you fall, you know what I mean? We really have
exactly.
to watch our
Yeah.
tone that expresses that trust. And
Yes,
so,
exactly.
yeah. And, the other thing I'll share that's, I think, coming back to trust, which can help, encircle both of these, that fear and the safety. We have a cue system and it lets me, and we practice it before we practice it in the car before we get to the setting, and then we practice it a few times. And it's just, I have a pretty fierce whistle, and if I whistle 3 times, my kiddos know to come back to me immediately. If I whistle
Hmm.
twice, they know just to freeze. And so it lets them get out of line of sight. It
Hmm.
lets it, because we have a really solid trust system. And
Hmm.
with that, I don't tell them our um our rule or whatever. I invite them to tell me what's our system of trust, and then they tell me,
Yeah.
so we get that buy-in. So
Hmm.
anyways, I
Yeah.
won't add and add and add. I
I know
could
we
do
could
that
probably go
all
on. I
day
feel like we could keep on
long.
going. Yeah, that's
That's
okay. We can always do a part two, maybe. That's a
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Before we close, is there any other questions or anything? Because sometimes when I give strategies, it's not closed. It's
Yes.
kind of left open. Is there any questions or anything, or do you feel pretty solid?
I think I mean, those are definitely great. I think those are really helpful for parents to kind of hear that. I think it's really helpful. Yeah, to hear from, especially somebody that's what you do. This is what you work with, and this
Yeah.
is, so I think that's really helpful. Just to get, yeah, different perspectives, different, ways to think about things and to approach different situations. Yeah, so you don't often read or even hear about these kind of things, these behavior parts. I
Hmm.
feel like parents don't really hear about these as much, especially in relating to the outdoors and getting outside. So it's kind of this still, I feel like it's still kind of niche in the parenting world, and we just need to kind of share,
Yeah.
yeah, and support families and parents in that. So yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Well, anyone listening, if I touch on a strategy that you want more clarification around, comment, reach out to me. We will make sure that you get the full understanding so that you can apply that. And
Mhm.
so, with that, um, Josee, would you please share how people can get a hold of you and find your work?
Absolutely. So probably the easiest place to start would be my website, which is backwoodsmama.com, BACKWOODSMAMA.com. I spell it out because sometimes I've had people say backwards mama or backyard mama.
Ah,
which I'm like, I can see how people might miss here. So
Mm-hmm.
backwoodsmama.com, and I have a lot of resources on there. And then also, if they want to know more about my book, I do have information on my website, but you can just go to Amazon. It's listed there. It's listed at a lot of the main book retailers, and it's called Beyond the Front Door: Embracing Nature for a Happier and Healthier Family. And it comes out, yes, end of February, February 24th, I think is the release date. And I have a newsletter, so if people want to be sort of getting information about my book or even up-to-date information on the things that I shared, I kind of always share information or even workshops other people are doing that might be helpful to parents or even educators. So that newsletter sign up is on my blog or my website as well. So yeah.
Very, very cool. Everyone listening, definitely, I encourage you to go to her website. Do you have a Facebook group too?
I don't have a Facebook
Okay.
group yet. I did, and then my Facebook group got hacked actually.
Oh
So
no.
I know, so I had to shut it down. I'm
Okay.
quite like I'm very active on
Okay.
Instagram.
Okay.
On yeah, if you search Backwoods Mama, I do have a Facebook page. I might
Okay.
start a group again. We'll see.
Well, I was just going to say, when listeners follow and like and love and comment on our work, it boosts our work so others can see it. So I
Absolutely.
definitely recommend that you find Josee and comment and definitely get her book coming out. How exciting. I will definitely be ordering that also.
Thanks,
And
Megan.
then for everyone listening, if behavior is something that you're interested in, no matter if you're a founder, an educator, or a parent, that is what I specialize in. Taking the walls away is amazing, and it's most amazing for the guide and the child when we can hold those really sturdy boundaries in really effective, positive, kind ways. And there's so many strategies that we can do that so that there's a lot more trust and cooperation and connection and effective communication and really becoming a team. So that's what I'm all about. And then, yeah, if you want to reach out to me, connectedkidsthrive.com or on Facebook, connectedkidsthrive.com or on, yeah, it's not wouldn't be.com though, I guess. Um, I guess I haven't researched myself on Facebook much. Probably just Meagan D. Duncan. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you.
If you loved this, let us know. We will have all of our links in the show notes. Check out the other series, the other interviews in this series. They're so amazing. And if you want to be interviewed, reach out to me and we will get that set up. And with that, we will wave and say bye. Bye,
Goodbye.
everybody. Thank you.